Hey, what's good, all? As always, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody's being productive today and getting things done. I just want to tune in real quick to the Rebuilding Community Trust channel for those who are new. Those who have been watching, as always, welcome. I'm going to talk about some decent topics today. The site is dedicated to educate, empower, and to get people involved in their community relations, what's going on around them, paying attention to the politics, the law enforcement aspect of things. It's been made to talk about police brutality and talk about how our communities are ran by the police. For those who have been tuning in, as always, thank you for tuning in. I'm never not grateful for those who participate and share this material and also get involved and into listening and supporting. I know it's been a while. I've been working on my other channel, often getting material out and talking about things with the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's called Freedom Fighters for those who are interested. Go ahead and check it out, share it. Hopefully you get something off of it. And hope you can be able to bless your life in amazing ways. I want to talk about today quite a few things. I'm going to talk about the critical race theory and how it applies to us as African Americans. And I'm going to talk about a few other things off topic. First things first, I've been looking into my news feed. I know I've been real busy, so I haven't had the chance to really sit back and look into the news feeds, but I've been looking into the news when it comes to law enforcement. It's amazing. One landmark case, such as the George Floyd case, has made such an impact that law enforcement officers are being retiring by the ranks. They're highly undermanned in the major cities, and the result of that, there's a lot of criminal activity. There's a lot of homicides, a lot of violence, gun violence. Cities like Chicago, Atlanta, I'm not sure, Miami, New Orleans, Dallas. You can go down the list of some of these local metropolitan cities and law enforcement agencies around the country, and you can see that crime is going up, especially in Chicago. A lot of the lack of officers being replaced for those who retire is getting slim pickings, and it's showing. With the trial of George Floyd and Officer Chauvin, former Officer Chauvin, now Derek Chauvin, and his results of what he did is starting to show officers that the accountability is starting to increase, and that you can't go out here and just do what you want to do. You can't go out here and just go out here and do anything type of way when it comes to the public, especially the African Americans. There's stuff still going on. There's people that are still going out here doing things they shouldn't be doing, and even with that, it's a real fine line, gray area for law enforcement officers now. So the more people are not even doing the job. So now is how does affect our communities? This is major. There's so much more crime now in today in a lot of communities, and it's taking a toll. So it's interesting enough to see what President Biden is going to do in reference to gun violence, and as far as this Congress and as far as our local and state and federal government agencies are taking action to step up on the violence that's in our major cities. Regardless, at the end of the day, whether police officers are held accountable or they are and they're not, at the end of the day, we need structure. We need some type of order. And a lot of times when communities can have the power to police themselves, it's one thing, but when sometimes you have crime overtaking, especially due to COVID and being locked down and going through the transitions of going back into normalcy, which is whenever that may be fully, you have to understand that, people are going to use the advantage to take advantage of crime. Whether it's drug related, whether it's social economically related, whether it's through heat of passion crimes, homicide, all types of stuff. People getting shot, killed, injured. It's time. So it's interesting to keep our eyes on watching that. Our communities, we got to continue to police our own communities, and the law enforcement that are available, that are actually standing by. We got to be able to work with them and build some type of community trust, which is, I know it's hard to do, and it's probably going to be, I have to say again, I said this before, but it's probably going to be something to none with all that's going on with police right now. Even still, their officers are still, some of them are still going out here and doing those type of going against the public in ways that they shouldn't have, and it's causing issues in those areas. So let's keep an eye on that, and it's interesting to follow the trends and see what the media is saying. Again, the media only can be taken with a grain of salt. when it comes to what's being reported these days. Another interesting aspect is obviously the George Floyd trial, which is, we have other officers going on trial next year, but the sentencing aspect of it, I don't know if it was today, but whatever the time is coming up, he's faced up to 30 years for the manslaughter and murder charges against George Floyd. Once the sentencing comes down, it's going to really show the world that accountability is here, or if it's still some tweaks in the criminal justice system in reference to getting charging officers that overstep their boundaries. So it's going to be an interesting time to see what the judge is going to render to Derek Chauvin for his participation in the death of George Floyd, and being able to see what the accountability is going to be held for him for the time frame, whether it's minimal or maximum punishment. So that's something to stand by on. It's going to be interesting to see the results, the outcome, whether he gets the full max or he gets the minimum, or whether he gets whatever he gets. And it's going to determine how far justice has really prevailed for not for just George Floyd and his family, but for all African Americans that have been suffered at the hands of police brutality. So standing by for that. And you just see the news, you see so much different things when it comes to African Americans, racism, police brutality, just so much with the racism aspect of things, or racial prejudice, or whatever you want to call the names today. You're going to see, the division still dividing itself among Americans as a whole. So, it's just something I've taken note, and it's interesting. You see so much crime, police officers, again, we talk about police officers, and we talk about how their jobs, their lives on the line, more critical than ever because of what happened with George Floyd. It was an interesting article I read where someone walked up to a police officer and just took his life, and he had left a 4-page letter on how much he hates police officers. And this is in Colorado, I think. I'm just looking at the article now. It's in Colorado, Arvada, and it's just, it shows the hatred for police officers during this time. So we got to be mindful. Again, this is something that was, people get tired. You're not just blacks, but white people. You have just all types of people that hates police, and it's making it harder and harder for law enforcement or destruction order to be rendered in each part of the country. So it's just something to pay attention to. I would say police our communities, continue to try to build relationships with police officers. I know a lot of people don't want to do that, and I understand that, but we have to maintain law and order and structure. We have to, because a lot of people are not, some people are capable of taking care of themselves and protecting themselves, but a lot of people aren't. And also you got to look at what is being done about the gun violence and what they're going to do as far as our gun rights, whether they involve themselves or not. So it's more down the pipeline. I just encourage people to really dig in and pay attention to what's going on around them and be aware. All right, so critical race theory. Something's been kind of floating down the pipeline. This is not an old theory. This has been early. It's the 1930s, and it's just been trickling down when it touches our school systems. It touches social economic statuses. It goes back to the Great Depression. It goes back to when the Great Migration of African Americans from the slaves, when the slaves were Emancipation Proclamation, and from the southern states, and then people moving up to the major cities in Chicago, New York, and some of the Pennsylvania, some of the northern states that allowed infrastructure of in the Industrial Revolution and getting planted and being able to move forward in their lives and growth. So the critical race theory is something that's been talked about lately in reference to schools. I know for the educational aspect of things, I know some schools have not accepted the critical race curriculum into teaching students about race theory and how it applies to themselves, whether it's in the sense of whites or blacks or minorities in general. So, excuse me. It's a lot of definitions for critical race theory, but one of the things that I want to kind of highlight is it's an academic concept. And it's like I said, it's back in the 1930s. It's a 40, 50-year-old theory, and it's been put on the table by many different philosophers, psychologists, criminal researchers, just dealing with theory in general and understanding. Sociologists, they're looking into these things to see what is affecting minorities, Caucasians, the majority when it comes to finances, when it comes to living in certain areas, schools, all these things. CRT, early 1970s and 80s, created by the legal scholars, and it talks about where it was back in the 30s, and they're using these theories to assess the racial composition of inhabitants in the area. For example, again, we talked about the Industrial Revolution. We talk about where African Americans moving from the south to the north and inhabiting those some of those inner cities, and you have the slums, you have the ghettos were created. So you have the low social economic statuses of people that's trying to maintain, they were trying to work and build their lives. So you have these areas where people live, and they don't have the best homes, the best infrastructure. They don't have the businesses in place. And, that's how I categorize, when you think of policing in this aspect. This is where all the slums and the ghettos are formed according to them, right? And you make these places, and you have the high crime areas, you have high drug trafficking, you have a lot of high criminal activity is increasing these areas. So therefore, you have police presence there, and they trying to deal with these inner cities. Chicago is the main, I'm not gonna say the main, but one of the many areas I could think of where this is where most African Americans migrated to during the 1930s and 40s, the Great Depression. And even now it's one of the highest crime rates in the country due to the homicides and gun violence, gang violence that's going on in this country often, right? Family zoning, single homes, affordable housing advantage. You got majority white neighborhoods, and you have minority neighborhoods, and you got your majority neighborhoods that has the property values. You have your taxes and stuff is so high there. You have a lot of people to afford. It's kind of a deterrent to keep people out that don't belong there. So if you have a certain type of profession, or you're making a certain amount of money, or even so you're living a certain type of lifestyle, you can afford those costly homes in those majority white areas. And a lot of times you don't want certain demographics living in those majority white areas, and it's a category. And if they are living there, they're shunned or not so much accepted, not so much more than it is now, because now most people can, if you make an honest living, you're making good money, you can live in those areas. But some areas are still like that, to where they don't want certain demographics living in those nice neighborhoods because of what they attract or what they think they attract, right? Critical race theory, this is how it applies. You got political power, social organizational skills, language. You have certain fields, certain type of jobs. It touches the school system. When you look at so much from the critical race theory, social justice, anti-racism, that these theories apply and they're put into our children, right? So this is why one of the arguments tend to grow about education, because the school system doesn't want to put in the heads of anti-racism or culturalism and socialism, right? And they tend to think that it's not important to talk about what's going on in our communities, especially during what happened to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. You have the Black Lives Matter movement, which is also under fire right now. You have a lot of different diversity, right? So we talk about diversity, the increase in diversity and inclusion, putting more African Americans in high positions, giving more recruitment for African Americans and minorities, doing things for other races, Asian Americans. You have Middle Easterners, you have Asian Pacific Islanders, you have, all these different minority groups, Hispanics, Latinos, you have immigrants coming from other countries, and they're all trying to fit in here. So the government, the federal government, is more focused on trying to help spread the diversity and inclusion. And not just our government, but in our country, in jobs, in our homes, in opportunities that we look into. So in sense of education is no different. We have to start including in diversity and talking about these things, getting people to understand and giving people not so much an option, but to learn about other cultures. It diversifies and gives people understanding to learn about the critical race theory, learn how it's important to African Americans and minorities, and not just shut yourself off because you don't want to hear about it. Some interesting things about it. It makes white people racist, and they target at white people more so because of their this white supremacy mindset. And again, a lot of the white people are not like that. I met some white people that, again, they're stuck by African Americans. They support it. Even in history, you see history throughout. You see white people supporting the civil rights movement and freedom fighters movement. And you see other movements that's taking place. We talked about Viola Liuzzo. I've known a lot of people that supported it, and whether back then from reading books or talking to people or just seeing it now. During the Black Lives Matter movement, you see other races involved, and they're still trying to learn how to deal with what's going on around us in our communities, because it affects us, right? So we can't so much categorize whites now into this group anymore, because sometimes some of the same pains are being felt through the white people as well as blacks and any other minority. Interesting thing about Supreme Court 2007, whether it's talking about diversity in the K through 12 schools, and he thinks that is a way to stop discrimination on the basis of race, is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. Both during oral arguments, then Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, it's very hard for me to see how you can have a racial objective but a non-racial means to get there. There was some issues back and forth during Supreme Court justices, and they was talking about this issue during the school system and putting this in the education system. And again, this is a vote through Supreme Court to continue to try to put these theories in schools and curriculums, just like you're doing LGBTQ. You're talking about certain genders being pushed through that. You're talking about, the American Constitution, and you're talking about things that are foundational that are put in our schools. Why is it critical race theory can be a course taught? And it can be very simple, just learning to diversify, learning to appreciate other people, other races, other cultures, teaching, getting a dynamic and a climate of togetherness and unity in all races, not just, I'm white, you're black, slaves, superiority, supremacy, let's try to build some unity, right? And it's hard to do because the country's so divided when it comes to so much different issues that people don't want to hear anything about critical race theory. They don't want to hear about unity. They want to just stay one side, one another. It could be just as simple as Democrat or Republican. It could be Christian or non-religious. It could be, male or female rights, whether it's abortion or whether it's dealing with feminism or you have the Me Too movement. You have for the men, they have a movement too. I can't think of the name right now. It's just on the tip of my tongue. Just so many different people can be sided on so many different things. Pride Month, you have all these different things that you don't understand and be able to look at why, what's the division, and everybody standing on one side of the coin instead of having some type of diversity and inclusion, right? When it comes to education, what this has to do with K through 12, it's the policies and practices in K-12 education that is persistent to racial inequalities in education. And that's with school zoning. It could be, certain schools that are predominantly African American are not getting the same treatment and the same, I guess, quality of education and curriculum when it comes down to the materials, when it comes down to the schools, when it comes down to, the teachers and the parent support, and also just the benefits that most majority schools or white schools have. That could be a big difference on a black school, predominantly black school, a high school, elementary school, or getting the resources that they need to help the students learn, all the way to testing, state testing, preparation for college, get them to the skills that are needed. And also people can say, hey, they don't want to learn, you can go into the psychological aspect, ACEs triggers. You can go into ADHD, disorders, learning disorders. You can go into all types of things, special needs, autism, sensory disorders, stuff like that. You can go into all types of things. But at the end of the day, are African American schools getting the same resources as what a majority white school would get? Some of the black families would have to kind of go to white schools if they can afford to go there, private school, charter schools, to get what's needed. And when you look at the statistics, racially segregated schools, underfunding Black, Latino, disproportionate discipline of Black students, barriers to gifted programs and selective admission to high schools, and curriculum that reinforce racist ideas. The ideas of racism is planted into the school system early on. When you don't have gifted programs, you have just sports and that's it, or music, which are good programs. But if you don't have stuff like STEM research, you don't have lawyers, you don't have stuff for engineering, math, and again, even with the blacks, with African Americans, we got to train our children to want to do those things. A lot of times the culture gets us in this mindset that we shy away from mathematics, we shy away from science and engineering and technology. We usually do sports and music, and nothing wrong with those things. But we should build more cultural for the African American minorities as well as the Latino, Hispanic, Asian, Asians usually tend to go more into the math and science and medicine side, but you have more African Americans branching off into engineering, branching off into trade, branching off into economics and finance and science, business, culture. You know what I'm saying? Not just, and again, there's nothing wrong with liberal arts or sports or music, but we have to also train our children to want to branch off in other fields, to put more of African Americans into the fields that we can affect more, influence more, right? And those schools should be prepared to gear out our African American kids and minorities to be prepared to succeed in college, state testing, and be able to be set up for success just like white kids are. So this critical race theory is not going to be put in schools. And there some people are fighting against it as far as the school system is concerned, because they don't want to push the agenda of putting opportunities for all different races and diversity to be able to succeed in these areas if they desire so choose. And it's amazing how they do nothing against LGBTQ at this particular thing, but they push agenda for that, but they want to push agenda for critical race theory, in the sense of teaching and understanding. So it's just my opinion on it. I think we should do it and let it be very, discussed. And that's just, it's the hard conversations. It's the hard conversations that we need to have in these schools. And it starts with the youth. We can put a class out, introduce the ideas. And then again, it goes to the teachers, it goes to the principal support, it goes to the superintendents, it goes to the Department of Education, it goes all the way down from the bottom to the top and top back to the bottom. So to put these ideas to create a culture for diversity and inclusion. Another interesting fact: critical race theory is not a synonym for culturally relevant teaching. And this has emerged in the 1990s, but as a teaching approach seeks to affirm students' ethnic and racial backgrounds and is intellectually rigorous. But it's related in that of one of the aims to help students identify and critique the causes of social inequality in their own lives. It's a social bonding. If you have more students that are more diverse, it helps with identity, it helps with acceptance, and it helps with building something stronger bond between more people versus having one school all black and only a few white people go, and having a school that's all white and only have a few people go. It should be one. The environment should be created and start to create where it's more diversity among all different types of children. You have black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Asian Pacific Islander. You have all different types of backgrounds, multicultural, and and again, it's not about people think, oh, we don't want to we want to lose. And be honest, we're going to lose our blackness when we do that, or we lose our whiteness, or we lose our culture. There's nothing saying to lose our culture, but there's nothing wrong with learning and being diverse and putting people into certain programs and certain positions to learn of other people. No one's saying you lose who you are as a culture. Well, I'm all black, or I'm all white, or I'm all Asian, I'm all Hispanic, or I'm all whatever. The point is to learn how to. It's called being well-rounded. All right, social equality. If I had more diverse group of people around me, I can learn from them. They can learn from me, and we become better. We can come together, and part of that racism aspect will diminish. It will be minimized because we all can look at our hearts and then look at it in the sense of, all right, I can learn from this person. His experience may be different. Her experience may be different. You learn, you grow. You don't isolate yourself. One of the things about the Navy and the military in general, we're put in positions where you have to work and live and work and go hard for people that you don't know. You're in that war. You're fighting against blacks. I'm not fighting. You're fighting with all types of blacks, Filipinos, Asians, Hispanics, whites, blacks, young, old, different backgrounds, different cultures, different perspectives. You're working and fighting alongside, and you're continuously learning from these people from different places every single day. That's one of the gifts about the military that I like so much, is that diversity. And you have no choice. You have no choice. You when you out there and you're in war, or you're doing a mission, you're right. The same people that you may not like, or the same people that's different from you, the same people that you're going to be working, eating, sleeping with, and fighting alongside with, and working with. So it's kind of made to learn. You got to learn this person. You got to learn their personality. You may not like everything about them. You may not know everything about them, but you share experiences, and you share knowledge, and you share perspectives, and you share different backgrounds of where they come from. You see people's ideals and how they live through the diversity factor. It's very beneficial to learn about other cultures. You don't want to box yourself into just I'm going to be who I'm going to be, and that's it. You don't grow that way. You don't mold. You don't grow and learn from other people's experiences by shutting yourself off because I'm black or I'm white or I'm Asian, Hispanic. It's easier because you all have the same values. You have the same culture. You understand there's certain things. You meet another Hispanic person from another group. I speak the same language. I have the same ideals, the same values. So it's easy to connect. And it's what's familiar you connect to, but it takes a bigger person to, or just having some slight of I don't want to sound like immature, but it takes a little bit more courage. It does, to step outside and say, you know what, I want to learn something different. And if those who do, who don't. If you don't, you don't. It's just something that you have to want to do. You have to want to step outside and learn other people's cultures and races. You have to want to learn their backgrounds and just get the chance to know that person. Don't look at the person by just their outside. Look at what they have on the inside. Look at what they know. Look at what they can offer. Look at what they want to teach you and learn and show you. You never judge a book by its cover, because you just never know what a person may bring to the table. I'm just looking at some other interesting things. So other countries, other states in the country is banning a critical race theory. Idaho, Iowa, Oklahoma, Tennessee. They're preparing to outlaw critical race theory in schools. They're looking at schools that teachers who want to talk about factual instances of state-sponsored racism, Jim Crow, the institutionalization of African Americans, voting, holding office, law enforcement, dealing with police brutality. These are tough topics that people don't want to talk about. But whether they're introduced and they're getting beat at state courts, state Supreme Courts, they're being shut down from the state level. It's causing people to not want to look into this stuff, and it causing the trend to continue. It's just so much to it. It's a lot of information. I'm just kind of going over some stuff when it comes to multiculturalism and ethics studies. But people this is something I think is worth researching and learning just what it is and how can you fight and encourage schools, particularly in the curriculum, to kind of talk about these things, have these hard conversations. And if they don't do it, it's up to the parents, up to the home to sit down and have a hard topic or have the hard conversation about critical race theory and see how it affects your children, whether you're white, black, Asian, Hispanic, doesn't matter what race you are. But if you sit down and talk to your children and have a mindset of opening your mind to looking at other things besides yourself, open your mind to see what's going on in as far as your communities around you. This is how trends can be broken. If you can sit down and look at, all right, I saw what happened on the news with this police officer, or I saw what happened in the news when it comes to this particular crime. Is it a hate crime? Or I saw what's going on in my school systems. I saw what's going on in my communities when it comes to what's around me. How can I talk to my children and get them prepared and open their minds to learning about the things I need to learn? How can I teach them and train them how to open themselves up to diversity and looking at, all right, how can I help someone else, or how can I be open to learning other people's mindsets when it comes to their backgrounds, their history, being able to learn diverse and spread yourself out, being well-rounded, multicultural, accepting. Again, it shouldn't take someone dying to get someone to have compassion. It shouldn't take someone getting killed in the street to have compassion, or say, that's wrong. It should start now. It should be a culture being built to support that. Again, and that's just what I think. Again, I think about the military. When I'm in the military and I go to different places, I meet all types of people, and they're all racist. And it's one of the most good things to see is to see people from different parts of the world that are, whether they're naturalized or coming from, families in other countries, or whether they live in the States, but they're coming from all over the country. And you're in this one room, you're roommates with different people that's from other parts of the world or other parts of the country. You see backgrounds, you see patterns, you see upbringing, you see knowledge, you see experiences, and you sit down and you have a conversation with these people and you learn so much. And you may not agree with everything they're doing. You may not agree with everything they're saying. You may not always agree with how they think, but you can learn and say, that's an interesting perspective, because that's something I didn't know. I didn't know what it's like in someone from Ohio. I don't know what it's like for someone in Colorado. I don't know what it's like for someone from California. I don't know what someone's like that lives in New York or Florida or Texas or wherever else they come from. How is the culture? How is your culture there? How is the food? When you people coming from certain places, it's simple as saying, hey, how's the area? You know, you may want to go visit. You may want to learn. And it just spreads you so much then. It makes you more diverse, and it makes you more well-rounded in the world. So that's kind of my critical race theory touch. I'm not going to go through. It's a lot of information. I suggest y'all all, kind of touch on it for yourselves. Go out there, read up on it, see how it can apply to your children. If you got children school age or even teenagers early or better, sit down and have a conversation. Talk to your kids about the critical race theory. Talk to them about diversity, inclusion. Talk to them about how can you help someone else and help learn from someone else. Teach them how to open mind so they can see the world more than just their lens and the skin color they're in, or their perspectives, or their views, or their thoughts or beliefs. Learn to open yourself up to other people, because you just never know what you may learn, and it adds value. Some things you get, you may not, what I want to do that. What that is right there, I may not want to engage in that activity so much, but you still can learn and get something from it. So that's all my thoughts on critical race theory. I may, touch on a little bit more when I talk another video. I'm going to stay tuned for more stuff. Interesting thing, again, is just all the shootings and all the violence. I may get some statistics next time and cover it when I do another video, but hopefully this is educational. Think about critical race theory. If you're in the position for Congress, or write your congressman or your state senator or even your city council, and if it's something that means something to you, especially for African Americans, but just people in general, something that you want to implement in your school systems, write these people and tell them, hey, how can we somehow come up with a curriculum that teaches the basics, even if you don't want to go into advanced, but the basics, or just do something increasing knowledge and diversity, inclusion, saying, hey, I want this in my school system. I want to talk about this. And those who don't, who are stuck in their ways, it ain't gonna kill you to open up and look at it. You know what I'm saying? The world's much bigger than what we have in our house and our communities. We got to be able to look at, have compassion and sympathy and even empathy for those who experience this, to go outside and say, you know what, I want to learn more. A lot of people say, oh, racism, white people, they say racism don't exist in them because they don't live in it. But I wish people really take the shoe off the other foot and look at, if you're white, be black for a day. Just pretend, just look at being African American. All right? And see, man, I can understand. And same with African American, learn to be white for a day. And see, the differences. Just picture that, that scenario, and see how, all right, I might want to consider this. I might want to think about it. And then some people have not. Some people are stuck in their ways. But for those who are considerate and thinking about it, you'll be surprised on how much important it is to talk about the hard topics, the hard conversations that we need to have. So that's all. I don't want to ramble on no more about it. But critical race theory, check it out for yourselves. We found some more material to talk about. Definitely, if you have anything you want to talk about, leave it in the comments. We'll definitely touch on whatever is needed. But think about that, all right? Y'all be blessed. Stay tuned. RBC.